30 years ago, a stubby little elf dude in a green windbreaker was told it was dangerous to go alone by an old man he met in a firelit cave. He picked up the sword offered, held it up high, and wandered out into the world, taking us with him, and we never looked back. The Legend of Zelda has spent 3 decades defining adventures in video games, each new main entry in the series doubling as both a new quest and a definitive statement about the capabilities of the Nintendo hardware that quest appears on. Link, living up to his name, has tied the series together throughout. He's always there, jaunty green cap and sword in tow, ready to save the day. But just like the consoles his games appear on, Link has changed and grown in ways both subtle and dramatic. Here is how he's evolved from 1986 to 2016. The Legend of Zelda. As both a tiny little sprite on the Famicom disk system he debuted on, as well as the warm art adorning the game's package, Link was indeed a nubby fellow. What he lacked in stature, he made up for in maneuverability and versatility. The original Link was fast for the hero of an action RPG, and his arsenal of items found in dungeons and purchased in shops gave him impressive reach. The boomerang extended his ability to grab errant rupees and hearts from across a screen, and the bomb let him pound through walls. He was nowhere near as expressive as he was nimble at the beginning, but he did have his signature move down pat. Whenever he found a new item or piece of the Triforce, he'd hold it straight up in the air like a champ. While most Links appear in multiple games, the design of the original has never popped back up, but his diminutive size and brown shock of hair poking out from his hat is most closely echoed in the 3DS's Link Between Worlds. The Legend of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Link grew up strong and he grew up right after all those mean Hyrule nights. Everything changed in Zelda 2. The overhead adventuring changed to a weird hybrid of map wandering, fetch questing for townsfolk, and side-scrolling platforming action. Link himself grew as well, turning into a tall young man with a perpetual grin on his elfin face, rather than the speedy boy of the original. Swordplay evolved even though Link's reach was shortened. He could stab up or down while jumping, and even level up his health and attack power by gaining experience after downing the game's insanely aggressive enemies. He also traded in his armory of attack items for a series of spells granting a variety of physical abilities, like increased defense or turning into a fairy. This Link, along with the wild side-scrolling elements, disappeared after Zelda 2. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Returning to the overhead, seamless structure of the original, A Link to the Past transformed him from a largely unreadable avatar to a gloriously personable cartoon character. Gone were the blank stares of the Link in 1 and 2. This Link bobs up and down as he jogs around Hyrule and Ganon's Dark World, his little hat flopping around atop a head of weirdly punk rock pink hair. Thanks to a massive upgrade to his item store, Link also had a variety of new moves. He can run thanks to a pair of snappy boots, swim thanks to some flippers, and even genuflect at a desert shrine after finding an ancient book. A Link Between Worlds for 3DS may borrow Link's look from the original NES, but it's a link to the past that is the basis for most of his moves, not to mention its nearly identical Hyrule. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. The strangest thing about Link's transition to the technologically inferior Game Boy in 1993 was that it also gave us a look at the hero in multiple art styles for the first time in-game. Zelda 2 let us see Link tiny in the overworld and big in action stages, but Link's Awakening opens and closes with bona fide cutscenes depicting Link as a wide-eyed anime hero, an incarnation of the character that would stick around for 2 more games on Game Boy Color, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. Game Boy Link's moveset wasn't dissimilar to the one in A Link to the Past, but he did pick up the ability to play multiple instruments rather than the usual one wind instrument. He also hangs out with an owl that was secretly the soul of a magic space whale. The Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. The series' debut on Nintendo 64 brought Link into the third dimension, broadening his combat skills dramatically. Nintendo's 90s-tastically named Z-targeting system locked Link's perspective onto an enemy and let him circle around them like a proper sword fighter. The hero can dodge, roll, dive, and pull off a variety of swipes and stabs. More dramatic, though, was the ability to play as Link at 2 wildly different stages of his life. At the beginning, you play as an adolescent Link, short and able to use only a limited number of items. Later on, though, you play as Link as a young adult, when he can wield heavier weapons and ride a horse. Traveling back and forth through time lent this Link a previously absent physicality, an intimate sense of how he related to the environment around him. The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. Finally, a Link who's savvy around water. When Zelda made the jump to GameCube, it reimagined Link's world as a primary colored cartoon archipelago whose emotive inhabitants looked wholly unique. Squat and barely into his teens, Toon Link moves more swiftly than the Nintendo 64 Link as he sails from island to island above a long sunken Hyrule. While this Link grunts and yells like the newly vocal Ocarina Link, his face is even more communicative, the broad cartoon features expressing fear, doubt, impatience, determination, and sometimes real giddiness. For the first time, Link also teams up with other characters, mentally directing his friends Medley and Makar around dungeons using his titular Wind Waker baton. His mentor is also a boat, possessed by an old man. The Legend of Zelda: The Four Swords. What began as a side game in the Game Boy Advance version of A Link to the Past ultimately expanded into 2 more full multiplayer games on GameCube and Nintendo DSi, as well as the excellent GBA adventure The Minish Cap. As indicated by the title, this Link is A, constantly having to battle a little turd of a wizard named Vati, and B, using the mystical Four Sword that lets him split into 4 different bodies. In addition to his traditional green tunic, he also splits into red, blue, and purple garbed Links as well. Much of the Four Sword quests involve puzzle solving, manipulating the environment using multiple bodies, an unusual spin on the spatial challenges common in Zelda games. The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. After years of running around as a kid, the young adult Link returned in the surreal Twilight Princess, and like most young adults, he had a pretty rough job. This Link is a goat herder, and nothing says high adventure like goat herding. Actually, he stops herding goats and goes on a quest to save Hyrule from being eternally merged with the spooky Twilight Realm, but there's still a lot of goat herding up top. While some costume tweaks and new moves don't bring this Link too far from the adult version in Ocarina of Time, he does have one significant new characteristic. When he's in the Twilight Realm, he forcibly turns into a wolf who bites enemies' glowing shadow hearts directly out of their chests. Pretty hardcore. The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. For better or worse, Link changed a lot in his marquee Wii exclusive. The console's motion controller recast the Zelda swordplay as a series of exacting puzzles, with each motion of your actual arm being mimicked by Link on screen and needing to slash enemies in specific ways. It worked, in theory at least. Skyward Sword's motion controls can vary wildly in terms of precision based on the environment it's played in. But this Link was different in other ways as well. For starters, he has a stamina meter that can run out if he sprints too long or climbs a cliff face too quickly. He's also a craftsman now, gathering up raw materials to make new items and improve old ones. Skyward Sword Link also hangs out with a giant red bird with a hilariously oversized beak, and his sword is also an irritating, oversharing artificial intelligence that loves to skate. If you dig this video and want to see more like it, follow Games Radar on youtube.com/GamesRadar.